The joke is it doesn't go up. You schwitz and hard of it to put it up. Do this, I go up. Okay. Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. So yesterday, right at the end of the day, we learned from Rabbi Yosy Achayrim, who said, "Don't bring me a raya that stam yad means small, because matzinu yamin shenikru yad. You find the word yad references the right hand. Shenemar vayar Yosef ki yoshes aviv yad yaminoi. Zok the Gemara v'idich yad yaminoi. You might find that it's called yad yaminoi, but you're not going to find that it's called stam. Yad yamina ikri, yad stam lo ikri. Rab Nosson Omer ein tzarich. I don't need any of your rayas that it means the left hand. Why? Hareyu Omer, it says ukishartem, similar to the mezuzah uchesaftem. My ksiva biyamin, just like writing the mezuzah. You write the mezuzah with your right hand. Av kshira, so too the chiv of kshira would be biyamin. Now, the chiv of the kshira biyamin, if you're doing the kshira with your right hand, you can't possibly be doing that on your right hand. It must be that hanacha is bismoil. So hanacha bismoili. Rabbi Yosy Hachayrim hanacha de bismoil mina lei. How does he know it? Because he said that the whole concept that yad means smile is no raya. Zot Gemara nafkele mehecha de nafkele Rab Nosson. He'll learn it out of a kashartim. You're doing the kshira with your right hand. It must be you're doing it on your left hand. Rabbi Ashi Omar miyotcha says ukashatom liyois al yadecha. No, that's not the right pasuk. Let me look at the pasuk over here. Ukashatom liyois al yadecha v'iltat. Oh, v'haya liyois al yodcha u'letaytafa is beyanecha. So yodcha is yud dalad chaf hey. Ksiv behei. It says yodcha with a hey, miloshen keya, weak. Now Rashi has two pshatim in what it means weak. One of them is not woke. Rashi says when the ksiv behei keya weaker, the mash miloshen keva must mean the female gender which is weaker. Shemamina bismoil kamar. So the hey is a loshen keva. The other pshat is lishnachina. It's yadka, the weaker hand. So it's not yodcha because it's written in a female gender, but the lashon of kaya it's weaker. Your left hand is weaker. Amalei Rab Abba l'Ravashi ve'ema yodcha shebekoyach. Maybe you replace the hey with the ches, which you sometimes do, and you should darshan your strong hand. The exact opposite. Amalei miksiv beches. It doesn't say beches, it says behei, and therefore we're saying it means yad keya, the weaker hand. Kitanoi, it's a machloikis tanoi. Yodcha behei, zu smoil. That's referring to the left hand. Achem armim yodcha l'rabbis esagidem, to say even if your hand is weak, meaning part of your hand is cut off, but of course you still have where to put the tefillin, that is also mechai of somebody in tefillin. If he has no arm at all, if he has no left arm at all, then he's patam tefillin. He has nowhere to put it. Which Tosfos says is not arguing. It means if someone has his arm partially cut off, but he has enough arm that he could place the tefillin, he's mechuyev in tefillin.
Maybe it means on a fake arm.
Did you put tefillin on a fake arm? That's not how the Rishonim are masbrit.
Don't we make a bracha l'aniach?
Yes.
That means the mitzvah could be putting on tefillin, not having them on.
Right. So what's your point?
If he's missing both arms.
If someone puts it on for you, you don't make a bracha.
No, we're talking about if he's missing his left arm, not his right arm. If he's missing his left arm, and if his left arm is cut off partially, but he can still place it, it's yot chalarabis zagidem. So we're not talking about someone who doesn't have his right hand. If someone has his left hand, then the another person could put it on for him on his left hand. But if someone doesn't have a left hand, he doesn't have where to put it. So the Rabbi Shagida means, let's say it's chopped off from the elbow, so he could still wear his tefillin. But if it's completely not there, Ein loy, then he can't put on. His right hand has nothing to do with it. His right-handed hand with which you would place it on.
That's what he's asking.
Oh, but you're asking me, he says, La'aniach, how can you do it if you don't have a right hand with which to put it on? I don't know. So does La'aniach mean when you do a Ma'aseh Mitzvah, you can't have a Shliach put it on for you?
I'm questioning why is the mitzvah to put it on and not have it on?
The mitzvah is to have it on.
Why do we say lahaniach?
So why do we make the bracha La'aniach if the mitzvah is that it should be upon us?
Yeah.
I don't know.
When we
Maybe-
tzitzis, we say al mitzvah tzitzis. We don't say lahaniach tzitzis.
So Vice is a mitzvah hanacha ukishartem. There's a mitzvah of kshira, unless you could do it. Unless you could do that through a shliach. That's a good point. To Mashu, there's a special mitzvah. It's a special mitzvah. Ich gehe zu leigen tefillin, melaik tefillin. That means the mitzvah is actually to putting it on, not having it on. I don't know. That's a good order. I don't know. Tanu Rabbanan, Itar, as someone who is left-handed, meniach tefillin biyaminoi. He puts the tefillin on what's his weaker hand, which would be yaminoi, because shehu smoila. That's his left hand. Especially if you're learning yad keah. It means you have to place it on your weak hand and you place it on your right hand. I v'tanya meniach b'smoiloi. Shehu smoila shel kol adam. So my body kitanya he b'shoilet b'shtei adam. If somebody is ambidextrous, I didn't learn that word in Torah, don't worry. If someone's ambidextrous, then he puts it on to his left hand. So Tosfos has a very interesting shaila. Ukeshartem, you know, from uchesaftam. You have to do the kshira with your right hand, just like you have to do the ksiva with your right hand, right? So Frek Tosfos is a very interesting shaila. Zok Tosfos, yesh listapik, in the case of Odom Akoshev B'Yaminoi, somebody who writes with his right hand, but V'shai Roiv Ma'asav B'Smoiloi, but everything else he does with his left hand. Yesh Listapek Be'ezem Ben Meniach Tefillin. Which hand is called the Yad Keah? V'sham Yesh L'Dmoisoi K'Shai B'Shnei Yodav. I'm sorry?
Russ said the hand he read with had that Shaul Reuben. He read with his right hand, but his stronger hand was.
Is the left hand. Oh. So it goes both to Ksiva, which is exactly what Tosfos says Shaila was. So I guess the boys can pass him.
Puts on 4 times.
Abshir puts on his own 4 times?
It's Rashi's twice and his right hand.
On both hands? Because he's not sure what's what? Really? So Abshir does not know if he's a righty or a lefty. But you can't put the same film on. It ties differently. Okay, here. I guess you.
Which one does he make broken?
Well, it's very simple. He puts on his left hand Sfard, but on his right hand he must put it on Ashkenaz. He's winding in because it's the opposite way. Very interesting. Kizak to Gemara Viter. Taner Rabbanan. Iter, someone who is a left-handed, maniach tefillin b'yaminai, shu smoilai. I v'tayim maniach tefillin shu smoilai, shu kol adam, amabai kitan hi b'shol b'shelav. Taner Rabbanasha, Taner Devei Menachos, al yodcha. Where on your hand does one place the tefillin? Zuki bayresh. I believe that's like the muscle where we put it. Bein einecha, says v'hoyla toitava is bein einecha, zukotka that's on top of your skull. Heicha amri, where exactly on the skull? Amri devei bianai. It's the place where the moyach of a child is softer, so the skull of a child softens up a little bit, and that's where we place our tefillin. Plimai asked the following child of Rebbe. Mishiyesh loy shnei roshim. What if somebody has 2 heads? Be'ezeh mehen meniach tefillin. On which of those 2 heads will he place his tefillin? Amarlei, I guess it's like Siamese twins. Amarlei. So Rabbi said, "Was hacks to me in Kappa Chinik with your nonsense. You know what? Oi kum gali, or go to Golus, get out of here, because I don't need you standing here anymore. Oi kabel aloch shamta. If you're going to stay here, I'm putting you to cherem. You're making latzonas." So the Rebbeinu irony is gewaltig. At the Hachi, as they're having this discussion, also who someone came in, Amalei, and he asked Rabbi Yoshaila, "Is yalad liyanuka the islate reishi?" I just gave birth to a Siamese twin who has 2 heads. So that just validated his shaila. So the question he asked is kama ba'inon l'meisav l'koyin. He wasn't asking a shaila tefillin, but it was a bechor. So he wants to know: does he have to give 5 shleim to a koyin for 1 child, or is it per head? Is it a head tax? Right? Asahu saba, which sometimes refers to Eliyahu Navi. Asahu saba tanalei Chayiv litin lo yud sloim. He has to give him 10 sloim. So there's, thank you so much, Phil.
Mati made it.
Oh.
I just put it in both.
Thank you. There's a whole shaila. What was the raya that was brought to calm down Rebbe? Was it the mere fact that this happened? Because the mere fact that this happened, meaning that such a child was born, doesn't really prove anything. Because it's still a nonsense shaila. Because maybe this is a child that could not possibly survive until his bar mitzvah. So the shaila of tefillin is still not relevant. Or so there are those who learn the mere fact that such a child was born and came just at that time is the point. But there are those who learn that it's even from the fact that there was a shaila of tefillin. So we're going to have to see what that means, since he probably wouldn't live to his bar mitzvah, this child. Okay. So he has to be paid to him. How could that be? Rami Bar Chama said, it means it's a very wide net cast. Even if this child was killed, Rashi learns. Even if the child was killed, Tosis argues, but Rashi, even if the child was killed within 30 days, you have to, it says Pad Shifta, you got to be paid anyway. The Avagav Dechsiv, Upeduyav mi ben Chodesh Tifta, even though it says that you make the pidyon when the child is 30 days old, and this child didn't even survive until 30 days, Afilu Hachi, nevertheless, Hachi Ikala Meimar, Imalai Nerag, Havachai, this was a viable child. Since it was a viable child, Ubechorma Al Yuhu, maybe they'd still be a Chiyav pidyon. Because it says, Padei Sifta, which is being marba. Talmud Loimer, we have a pasuk that tells us, no, this child does not need a pidyon ben, ach. It says, ach cholok, the pasuk quoted is, Kol Peter Rechem, L'chol Basar, Asher Yekriv Hashem, Ba'adum Vavemi Yeloch, ach, Padei Sifta. So ach says that if someone gets killed and doesn't survive the 30 days, there wouldn't be a pigeon. And here is the punchline, Dr. Rashi. V'hai nami kenidrav dami. This child is like a treifa. Sharei lo yichya. This child will not be able to survive for the long term. So therefore, this child does not require a pigeon event. The Gemara, shiny hacha, the big gulgoilas. The reason why by Bechor it was even a shaila that we needed ach to be chalak is because it's totally in the Gulgoilas. Because the Torah says Chamesha Skolim Ligulgoilas. V'hai is latrei, and this child happens to have 2 Gulgoilas. V'imishum achalak hashamia loimes. But the child still did not die. The child is right now alive. And therefore, this child would you'd have to give 10 shkolim. You have to give 10 shkolim, even though you have the meat of achaluk. But since it's told in the Gulgoilas, and now this child is alive, in fact, it requires 10 shkolim. Okay. See, the difference is that even though you have a raya that there'll be a pidyon a ben done for it, but the child is not likely to live to his bar mitzvah until tefillin would be required. So, again, if the raya is just for the fact that such a child existed, then you have your raya. But if that's a raya, why there will be a tzah that he should wear tefillin, the whole child of tefillin is still not relevant. Zok Gemara weiter. Amar Mar. So let's go analyze this price. Yot chazu kibayers minalan the Taner Rabbanon. Well, there's a very important kasha here from the Vilna Goyim and from the Chazon Ish, and they asked the following question: if, in fact, a person is a treifa, if he has 2 heads, which is clearly how Rashi and Tosfos learn, so oy bezoi, how did that diffuse the anger of Rav Plimoy? At the end of the day, he asked a shaila that will never ever happen, because this child will never reach his bar mitzvah. That's one kasha that he asks. The other kasha that he asks is, the Gemara says, the Balta says, Legolgoiles, so it's unique over here that the Torah says, even though it could be one person, but you pay 5 shkolim per skull. Why? Vosapis, by the mitzvah of Pidyon Ben, did the Torah say it's per skull? It's a very unique type of chiyuv. So the Vilna Goyen and the Chazon Ish learned differently. Actually, it's quoted only from the Chazon Ish. The Vilna Goyen has the kasha. So he says that a Baal Shnei Roshim is in fact not treifa. It's not treifa. A Baal Shnei Roshim is not treifa, and this child can very easily live for a long term, and the Shiloh Tefillin would be relevant. But the Gemara's kasha was, since you see that the Torah does pater a treifa from pigeon, why does the Torah pater a treifa from pigeon? Because a Bechor is not going to be mechuyev in pigeon unless he has a complete life. You know, a child that's not viable to survive, even though he'll live past the 30 days, but if a child's not going to live for an extended period of time, why? Because he's a treifa, that's not called a complete life, and maybe the Torah is only mechayev pidyon ben on the complete life. So therefore, maybe you can argue that a Baal Shnei Roshim is not considered a complete life, because each head is not a complete life, because it's only half of the body. So therefore, could be it's similar to a treifa, not because it's not viable, not because it cannot survive long term, but it's because it's a half of a life, and therefore there would be that tzad to say that it doesn't need pigeon at all, and that the Torah tells us that it goes bus or golgoilas, and therefore you'll be mechuyev in pigeon. So oibazoi, there'd be a very relevant shaila lagabe tefillin as well. So then the raya to the shaila of plima wasn't just that happened to be a child that was born. There's a child that was not a treifa that was born, meaning the assumption is that this child will survive to his bar mitzvah, and therefore it was a legitimate shaila. Which head needs the tefillin? Which is an interesting twist. Gezakt to go more weiter. That's the place in your hand where the muscle sticks up. Maybe you got to put the tefillin right on your palm. The Torah says, put your tefillin on your hand, put your tefillin on your head. Just like when you're putting your tefillin on your head, it's basically the highest part of your head. Afkan, the highest part of your arm, meaning of that muscle. I don't need that svara. Because this is a personal ois for you. It's not an ois that you're supposed to show the world. This is personal. The ois on your head, that's to show the world. For your Menachos we learned. But the ois on your arm is a personal, private, intimate ois. There by your arm, no one's going to see it. It's under your sleeve sometimes. But on your hand, everybody would see it. So maybe the kshira also has to be al levavchem, near your heart. Shetesima keneged alev, your tefillin on your arm should be on that level where your heart is. Reb Chia v'Reb Acha b'Rei Reb Avia mechaven umonach lei lahada libe. They also would make sure that the tefillin sholyah that they had would be opposite their heart. Reb Ashi have a Yosef kamei da meimar. Reb Ashi was sitting in front of a meimar. Have a tzirei biyadei. He had a wound on his arm where the tefillin was placed. So in order so that the tefillin shouldn't put too much pressure on that irritated area, they sliced open his sleeve so his sleeve wouldn't put pressure on the tefillin, because when you pull your sleeve over your tefillin, your sleeve squeezes it all together. But if he opened up his sleeve, so now there wouldn't be pressure on his arm, on the irritated arm from the tefillin. Everyone saw them. So it wasn't la'ois lecha, it was no longer a personal, private ois. Everyone could see it. Don't you hold of that shita that it shouldn't be easily seen by everybody? That the Torah is not telling you that no one could see it. The Torah is telling you put it in a place where under normal conditions it wouldn't be seen. That doesn't mean no one could see it. It just means place it in a place that's a more personal, intimate area. How do you know that you have to put it all the way at the top of your head? The Tanur Rabban says Beyinecha, Zu Goy v'Shabaraish. Frag the Gemara, Ata Omer Zu Goy v'Shabaraish. Beyinecha mamish. Beyinecha means literally in between your eyes. Why would you say that means on top of your head? The Torah says Nemer Kan Beyinecha. There's an Isser to tear your hair out between your eyes. Lemeis. Where is the Isser L'Sisimu Karcha? That's on your head where hair grows, where when you tear your hair out, it'll create a gash. Avkan begoy shel roish. Makam shoyse karcha. So too, where you place your tefillin has to be begoy v'shabarosh, where if you tear it out, you become bald over there, right? That's what l'sasimu karcha is. Don't create a bald spot by tearing your hair out. So that's how we know that that's where the tefillin goes. Rabbi Yudah ben Yitzchak, Omer Torah hanach tefillin biyad, and the Torah says hanach tefillin b'rosh, and we're going to compare the two. Mal alam b'makam aroy l'tama b'nega echad, afkan b'makam aroy l'tama b'nega echad. The tefillin shabarosh, if there was no tefillin there, you could have a nega there. What type of nega could you have on your hair? There's only one type of nega that you could have on your hair. The Torah speaks about a nega b'rosh v'zakon, a nega in a place where it grows hair. And there it says that in order for it to be tameh, the siman tameh is that a gold hair has to grow in that space. On a nega of basar, we said that a white hair has to grow in that space. So there's two different types of negoim. There's nega on basar, and there's nega on hair. Zok to Gemara, just like tefillin shabaraish, is in a place where it's only possible to be inflicted with one type of nega shabaraish, afkan. Just like on your arm, just like with the negas on your arm, it could only be a place where one nega would be, which is a nega on basar, because that's all there is on your arm basar. There's no hair there. Afghan, so too, when the Torah says put the tefillin on your head, it should be b'makam eroyli tama b'nega achar. It has to be a place that could b'nega echad that could only become tamei with one nega. So on your head, the only type of nega you could have is a nega of rosh zakon. It can't be a nega of basar. But if it will be mamish in between your eyes, in that zone, there's your eyebrows which has hair, but there's also plain skin that has basar. So that's subject to two negoims. Lafuke b'necha dika basar v'sar. I'm sorry? No, but it's not above and below, right? Because it's not such a wide patch where the whole film will be only in that place. The Ika Sar Lavan, Vikanami Sar Tzohiv, there would be the requirement of Sar Lavan on a skin area if there was a nega to form there, and there would be a requirement of a gold hair if the nega were to form in a hairy area. Therefore, let's say it's the top of his head, which could only be subject to a nega variation. Okay, now we're going to change gears and we're going to talk about tzitzis. The Mishnah says, Arba tzitziyos ma'akvei su'osu, shar boson mitzvah achas, they're all one mitzvah. If you're missing one, you're not mekayib the mitzvah of tzitzis. Now, we had another sheet in the Mishnah that said that each one of the four is a mitzvah on its own. But regardless, you need to have four tzitziyos. So then, for example, my benayu, say according to the first svar in the Mishnah, so according to the second, you need to have four tzitzis. So therefore, what's the difference? Rabbi Yosef, Sadan b'tzitzis ike benayu. You know where the nafkamina was? The nafkamina would be if it was klayim, if it was shatnez. We know the mitzvah of tzitzis is doiche klayim, but that's only if you're mekayim the mitzvah. But if you're not mekayim the mitzvah, then it's klayim in the beged. So if you hold that you only have three instead of four, if you hold each one is an independent mitzvah, you keep it that way, because each one is a mitzvah. That's doiche the issur of klayim. But if you hold, you're not mekayim the mitzvah unless you have all four, so if you only have three on their klayim, you wouldn't be able to keep those tzitzis in place. Rabbi Barahino Amar, talis balas chomesh ikabenayu. It's referring to a talis that had 5 corners. And what does Rashi say? Rashi says, You cut one of the corners on the diagonal, and you basically formed two corners out of that one corner. We learned, we're going to learn later, that talis balas chamesh, a talis that has 5 corners, chayeves b'tzitzis, still need tzitzis. Now it depends on how you learn. V'yalef meribuya da'asher t'chasaba. So latana kama damar mitzvah achasein, so for arba dafkala mitzvah achas. Even though you have 5 corners, you only need 4 tzitzis. V'chi Rabbi Rachman balas chomesh, we have a ribuy for balas chomesh, that's only lahatel arba, kan foisel rabia. Only to tell us that it also needs 4 tzitzis, but it's still 4 tzitzis. V'loy lahatel knaf chamishi. The mitzvah is not to add a 5th for the 5th corner. U'mitzvah tzitzis b'dal knafais. But Rabbi Shmuel damar bason arba mitzvahs. But according to Rabbi Shmuel, who says that each individual tzitzah is a mitzvah, ki Rabbi Rachman bal chamesh nami lahatel lechulu Rabbi adachad mitzvah ba'apanavsha. Each one is a mitzvah by itself. So the nafkamina would be, if you had a beged with 5 corners, do you need 5 tzitzis or do you only need 4 tzitzis? Ravi namad Rabbi Huna kibenayu. The machlokes is about something that Rabbi Huna taught us. Number of Huna. You go out with tzitzis that's not properly done on Shabbos. So now you'd be high for carrying. If it's part of the mitzvah, then it'll be part of the beged. But if it's not part of the mitzvah, then it's some extra. It's not bottled to the beged, and you'll be high for carrying. Therefore, chayiv chatas. So how does this? So Rashi is everybody else. If you're not being mekayim the mitzvah, it's carrying. Miu hital l'shalosh v'leil revius. What if you put 3 out of 4 tzitzias? L'tanakama have a mutziyah shloik l'chasa. According to the Tanakama, you're not being kind of mitzvah. V'chayiv chatas, you'll be chayiv chatas. The avaluhu tzitzis matzui. It's like a load. It's not bottled to the beggar. Ulu Rabbi Shmuel, who holds each one individually is a mitzvah. Have a mutziyah l'chasa. It's proper tzitzis, at least those 3. To gimel mitzvahs miya'ika. Ve'eni puzzle. It's not puzzle. Where did Rav Huna says Allah if it's not mitzvah it's kochasoi? That's if it's possible. If he had some other problem with the tzitzis that would render them possible. So that's really also nafkamina. So everybody holds of Rav Huna. The question is, does this qualify as a mitzvah? Amar B'shisha B'rei Rabidi. Haiman the Batrei Leglime. What if somebody cuts off the corner of a beged? Le'od v'loy klub. It does not have an impact on the chiv of tzitzis because shavya talis balas chomesh. It makes the beged into now a beged with 5 tzitzis, which we said anyway requires tzitzis. Amar Masharsha.
What if you cut off the whole corner?
Well, it depends how you cut it. If you cut out the diagonal, you create 2 corners.
No,
Not 90 degrees, but 45 degrees. Amar Masharsha, what happens if someone's beged is too long? So he folds it in half and he sews it down. And he put now on the new 4 corners. So 2 of the 4 corners isn't really a corner of a beged, it's a place where the beged is folded over, right? So Haiman desire leglime le'avd v'leklum, and he's not mekayim tzitzis because he has 2 tzitzis on the corner, but 2 tzitzis are on the fold. That's not called tzitzis because my taima the chaman deshar yudami. We know that this will not remain in this state forever. Eventually it's going to be opened up, and therefore the 4 outer corners are the 4 corners that require tzitzis, not where it was folded. Utnanami, Tosfos actually has a problem with that, because Tosfos says that that it should be considered a new beged in the fold, because he brings down v'shavin shem kafla v'tafra shechayeves almo shechayeves b'makam akfelos l'atashom tzitzis. So Tosfos has a kasha on Rashi's pshat. Now Rashi actually has 2 pshatim. He has one where it was sewed down, and that's the pshat that Tosfos doesn't like. But Tosfos says Rashi has another pshat. Rashi has another pshat that he does like. Let me just look at Tosfos over here. Pirish b'kodesh b'loshen acher shenichval talisa v'tafra shlo toshav leisana. That if it's sewed down, Tosfos holds it should make a difference. Tosfos only holds that if you fold it and it wasn't sewed down, so there we say it's as if you didn't fold it. But if it was folded, Tosfos holds that does create the new beged. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. Utinanami kol chamosos hatzuros tahiros Chutz mishal arviyim. They used to have jugs made out of leather that they would, a jug or a flask that they used to hold their liquids in, their drinking. So if it's not sewed, it just wrapped with a strap around and tightens the opening. That's not called a proper flask that's completed. It's not called a keli, and therefore it's not makabel tuma. Chutz mishal arviyim, except the Arabic ones, because that's how they made theirs, and that would be a completed malacha, and it would be a completed keli, and therefore it's makabel tuma. Amrab libi min harda. Haiman the chayte liglime loy ovid v'loy klum. If someone again folds over his beged, it doesn't mean anything. Im isad lebiboyle lifts like vilashadja. If he didn't need it, he could have cut it off. Since he didn't cut it off, he just folded it. It doesn't count. Okay, here's probably where you have the second. We have the second lotion. Okay. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Rabbi Shmuel Amar Arba Asad Arba mitzvahs. Each one of the 4 tzitzis is a mitzvah into itself. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Halachic Rabbi Shmuel. The halach is like Rabbi Shmuel, but the less hachazak say. But we don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda. So we don't pass like Rabbi Shmuel. We hold all 4 are one mitzvah. Ravina Avakosol Abasrei Demar Bar Ravashi Bishabata Derigla. He was walking behind his Rebbe on a very busy Shabbos, the Shabbos where they would say the drasha about the Hilchas HaChag, so it was a busy Shabbos, and on the way to Shul, Ifsik Karna Duchute, one of the tzitzis of Mar Bar Ravashi tore. But the Talmud didn't want to tell him about it. When he reached his house, then he said, by the way, your tzitzis already tore 3 blocks before you got home. So Mar Bar Ravashi told him, why didn't you tell me right away? Had you told me right over there, Rebbe, your tzitzis tore, shadiz, I would have taken my beged off right away, not to be over a chi of Shabbos that I'm carrying. Obviously, they held all 4 were one mitzvah. Frek the Gemara by Amar Mar, didn't you say Godel covered abriyash shadoiches loises shabbatayra? So you wouldn't have taken off your beged anyway, because it's not covered abriyash for you to disrobe in public. Zok Gemara, Tirgamar Rav Bar Shaba, Kamed Rav Kahana, I love the Raisa. You got to take it off in public. That's not the covered abriyash that we're talking about. You know what you could waive? You know which mitzvah you could waive because of covered abriyash? Belav de loisaser. A lav of loisaser, which means kegoyin. Lav loisaser means a lav that's the Rabbanon. Loisaser means that the Torah is commanding us you should not turn away from anything that the Rabbanon say. That's the lav that you could be over. For instance, going tiltal, also mid Rabbanon, like mukse, or other types of mukse which are only the Rabbanon, that you'd be able to be over to cover abrias. But a mamish, a lav of carrying, which is a deraisa, that you would have had to take off and beg it anyway. Vikadamri mehasam omerle. There's another version of how the story went down, where the Talmud did tell Mar Ravashi right on the spot, Rebbe, your tzitzis tore. Rebbe says, so because my tzitzis tore, what are you suggesting? My daitech lemishti? Are you suggesting I should take off my beged here in public? Mar Ravashi says, no, I won't do that. Because if you Amar Mar, God will cover abriyash, shadoiches loises shishabbatayra. So the Talmud said, what do you mean loises? Vatirgamel Rav Shava, Kamed Rav Kana, beloved loisaser. But this is a deraisa, Rebbe. So you got to take off your jacket right away. So the Rebbe answered, Hachanami Carmelis Rabbanon he. We're not here in the Rosh Hashanah, we're in the Carmelis. So even the carrying used to be the Rabbanon. So Avad the covered abriyash is doiche, even though I know I'm missing one of my tzitzis, I still don't have to take off my beged. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we finished the 3rd parak of Menachos. B'lineder hadin alacha koimetz, b'lineder hadin alacha koimetz, b'lineder hadin alacha koimetz. Agit chodesh, nakitshuv shenich tzad emar b'simcha, shvi a gebenchte day in chodesh.
Koyach.
Shkoyach.